We're going to get started here, and hopefully Josh is going to get on in just a second. Bisa, I'm going to send you Josh's email address and see if that can, unless he's just gotten on. And I'm going to ask you to help him, please.
Got it.
So I can get going.
Got it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, go ahead there. Okay, let's see. Well, good. We've got a good crowd on here this morning. And if we have to, what we're going, got it still not working, just says connecting again. Well, goodness. Okay, Bisa, that's your challenge for the morning. Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to get going again. I'm sorry, technical difficulties sometimes. That love-hate relationship with technology drives me crazy, but I wouldn't live without it. So I welcome all of you this morning. We are waiting for our guest speaker, but we still have three very important people on here. Well, we're all important, but three elected officials that are going to be sharing with us, and we will be giving them maybe a little bit more time. We didn't get all our questions answered last week, and so Karen is here and hopefully has some of those for that we can answer and have a dialogue. So, but we'll make this work. So, the one thing I want to say is that, the grassroots is making a difference, and it is truly what you've done by communicating with your elected officials are getting bills through the committee and getting bills through the to the floor, to the calendars, and then to the floor. And it's not a sitting back. We're the ones making a difference. We get messages, oh, this one's stalled, this bill is stalled. We put a call out, and it's not just a team here that's all on this call, but it's multiple people across the state. So I just can't thank you enough, but I want you to know what you're doing is making a difference. I know we're on the last, legs, and we're going to hear that right now. We don't have much time, like 3 meetings. Well, they have till the end of May. We've only got 3 meetings left after this one. So continue doing the work you're doing because it is making a difference. So I'm going to move right on into Senator Brian Hughes. I see your number there. You're at the top of my list. So please, why don't you start us off, Senator, and tell us what's going on in the Senate in the elections integrity and what we've got going. And I've got to turn off this thing here. So,
well, good
Senator,
morning. Thank you.
Over to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on this morning. And it's exciting. And you said it very well, Mr. Shield. What you guys are doing, when you get involved like this, it does matter. There are many bills moving through the process, and many times voices get drowned out. And so when we hear from you, it makes a difference. And so thank you so much for doing this. Last week, we spoke about a number of election bills that had been voted favorably out of the Senate Committee on State Affairs. I'm honored to chair the Senate Committee on State Affairs that hears election bills. That committee also handles pro-life matters. It handles religious freedom, judicial matters, things, of course, the election process, a lot of things that are important to conservatives, the Republican women, and grassroots groups. And so last week, we talked about a number of those bills. One was the election marshals bill. So we'll have specially designated DPS troopers who will be trained in election law so that they can help settle those disputes that arise at the polling place. Many of us on the call have been at the polling place, and maybe there's an election judge that doesn't know they're supposed to let the poll watcher in, or they're not following the law. And many times when the police are called, they tend to just do whatever the election judge says, and sometimes they're wrong. And so these election marshals, we think will help. They'll also have jurisdiction to investigate election fraud elsewhere, and a prosecutor will be required to investigate the matters they bring to them. That bill passed the Senate State Affairs Committee last week. It passed the Senate floor this week, and it's on its way over to the House. Also, the creation of an elections security division in the Secretary of State's office. That's an important bill that's on its way to the House. The Attorney General's office, our excellent AG, Ken Paxton, has been aggressively going after lawbreakers, and that includes folks who are cheating, vote harvesters, and people who are trying to steal elections. And this will give them, make their job easier as they try to do that. Also, that important requirement that for that ballot by mail, with the application for mail ballot, the voter will include their driver license number, their state ID number, or their last 4 digits of their social. If they don't have that, that'll have to go on the ballot application. And you know how it goes. You send your application for ballot by mail, then the county sends you the ballot, and then you return it. And on the envelope, underneath the flap, so it's underneath the flap, you'll write your driver license number or your state ID number or the last 4 of your social. And that way, when that ballot envelope gets back, they'll open it up and they'll match that driver license number with the number on the ballot application to make sure it's really you and not someone who stole that envelope from the post office or from your mailbox or someone who claimed to be you. So it just makes sense. It's voter ID for mail ballots, and it doesn't put any burden on anyone, doesn't add any cost to anyone. The theme that you will hear through all of these Republican election integrity bills is we want to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Easy to vote and hard to cheat. We have been accused of everything you can imagine based on these simple common sense election reforms. Senate Bill 7, which I was proud to author in the Senate, which is a comprehensive common sense election reform bill. I've defended that bill on CNN twice, in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all kinds of Texas media, and the national media, and some of the Texas media, they just march in lockstep, and it doesn't seem to matter what the facts are sometimes, but we're glad to have the truth on our side and glad to have the Republican women and the grassroots on our side.
I had actually signed the contract, but Janet had not yet signed.
And so,
period. I'll be talking to.
A couple more bills. A couple more I want you to know. So, and then a couple more from this week. I just wanted to let you know about. Now we talk about, as you know, Senate bills come out of the Senate, House bills come out of the House, and they cross over. I know our friends in the House have some exciting news from the Elections Committee, but let me tell you about a couple more things in the Senate. So we are at the point of the session now that House bills are coming over to the Senate, and Senate bills are coming over to the House. And as you know, once a House bill comes over to the Senate, once we pass that bill, if we pass it in the same form, it's on its way to the governor. So that's obviously very exciting. So House Bill 574, House Bill 574 by Representative Bonin, and many members, my goodness, the members on this call are joint authors and co-authors of this bill. Our House member friends on this call, House Bill 574, it plugs a very important hole in our election laws because until now, it's not been against the law to count an illegal vote or to refuse to count a valid vote. That wasn't a crime in Texas. It was a crime to attempt to cast one. But if you're in that elections process, you're that election official, and you know that there's cheating going on, this will make it a crime for you to count that illegal vote or to not count a valid vote. Again, that bill came over from the House. It was in the Senate Committee on State Affairs, and we had our meeting yesterday, and we voted that committee out. In fact, I was proud to present that bill to the committee. So House Bill 574, specifically identified as a Republican Party priority on election integrity, is on its way to the Senate floor. And if we did not amend the bill in the committee, and so if it passes the Senate floor with no amendments, it will be on the governor's desk very shortly. We're excited about that. Also, I mentioned one by Senator Bob Hall. Many folks on this call know that Senator Hall, my friend and my neighbor up in East Texas, has worked hard on election integrity, and he's been sniffing around and the cheating that's going on. And one thing he's discovered is that the gap between early voting and election day provides an opportunity for mischief. When the votes from early voting are counted, but they're not supposed to be released, but they're counted. People know what those numbers are, and there's evidence that that allows the vote harvesters and the cheaters, once they figure out how far behind they are, they know how many votes they have to steal or manufacture or coerce on election day. And so that's been a concern. Also, it's complicated because we have to use one set of machines for early voting and a different set of machines for election day. It's more expensive. Just many problems with that system. But we've always done it this way, so we've never questioned why. Many states, instead of having an early voting period and then a gap in election day, they just have a voting period. And it's a smooth transition. It's more secure. It's easier to keep track of. You know how confusing it is. How many times have you been making phone calls for a candidate or knocking doors, and the voter says, "Now, when does early voting end? What are the dates again?" And you got to remember early voting. Senator Hall's bill says, let's just have an election period. Let's have a 2-week period where early voting begins and then it runs through election day. We don't have this dichotomy between early voting and election day. Now, this is a big change in Texas, and so Senator Hall's bill says we will put that in place in the two election cycles from now. And between now and then, the Secretary of State will work with our county election officials, and we'll go through the election code and make sure we have all the processes in place. This is a big change to Texas elections. Now, this bill was just heard in the Senate Committee on State Affairs. We're late in the process, but we anticipate, working with the members, getting people comfortable with this and moving the bill forward. So that's a big change in Texas elections. It should make them smoother, more secure. And that's going to take a cycle or two to implement, but that's an exciting one. Again, that bill is still early in the process, and it may not make it through this time. We hope it does, but that's going through as well. Again, the theme that you'll see running through all of these election security bills, most of the measures are aimed at the vote harvesters, at the people who are cheating. The voters themselves are trying to do the right thing, but oftentimes they're coerced, they're misled. Someone offers them a ride, and in fact, that person is trying to coerce their vote and look over their shoulder and tell them how to vote. Many times these vote harvesters come to the door or wait outside the polling places, and the voters think they're officials. They think that they're afraid to disagree with them. So we're putting measures in place in all of these bills to protect voters, to protect the integrity of the vote, and make sure it's easy to vote and hard to cheat. So these bills continue to move, and I mentioned that House bill coming over. More House bills are coming over, and we'll be moving those through. So we're very encouraged. You may have seen Governor Abbott last night on Fox News with some other governors, with Governor DeSantis from Florida and a few others, and they talked about a number of important issues, and one of those was election integrity. And Governor Abbott specifically said, we're going to pass Senate Bill 7. We're going to pass strong election integrity in Texas. He also talked about social media accountability, Senate Bill 12. I know that's beyond the scope of this call. I'd love to talk with you about that and other bills. But we're excited about what's happening on election integrity in the Senate and in the House. And we're so thankful. We're so thankful for what you're doing. Keep it up. Please keep it up.
Senator, thank you so much. I mean, it is so informative. It's encouraging. And I know you guys are under the gun and you don't have much time, but keep up that hard work. And thank you for sharing this information with us. We really, really do appreciate it. So, wow. Awesome. So thank you so much, but don't go away because we might have some questions for you after we get the rest of the program done, but we really appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I do see Josh down there. We're not going to turn it over to you yet, Josh, but we're so glad you made it on. We are going to go to Chairman Click and have her give us an update before we go to Representative J.C. Jeton. So Chairwoman Click.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We are to the home stretch of session right now. You're seeing that we're spending far more time on the floor. You can think of legislative session as a funnel. And the beginning of the funnel is when people file bills and then they go to committee. And after committee, you start seeing them go to calendars and onto the floor. So we're spending a lot more time on the floor than we are in committee right now, but committee work is still going on. One thing that after a bill passes committee, it doesn't immediately go to calendars. There's a committee report that has to be filed. There's a bill analysis that has to be worked up and a fiscal note before it goes on to the next part of the process. So there's a fair amount of work after a bill is voted out of committee before it actually gets to calendars. You know, a lot of people think that once it's voted out, it immediately, instantaneously goes to calendars, but that process does take a little bit of time. And we used to get bill analysis and fiscal notes before a hearing. And this session, we're getting it after the hearing. And so we have to wait on Ledge Council to prepare that. We have to review it, make sure that it's correct. Many times it's not correct. It requires additional changes and edits to it. So a lot of work still to go after a bill passes committee. This is probably the last weekend. We're going to be going home for the weekend. You'll start seeing us work on Saturdays as well. So we're in the home stretch.
That's yeah, I know. And we again appreciate you too for everything that you do. I know you have you're chairing another committee, but being on here is so important in giving us those details, because it's that process we're not all aware of. And sometimes we are, like myself, and I forget. I said, oh yeah, I forgot we got to go that before it gets. Appreciate you doing that and all the hard work that you're doing. Now I'm going to put you on the hot seat right now, Representative Jaton. I know you're on there. I just saw you. Up there you are. If you could give us a report, we'd appreciate it, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know probably a lot of you saw what happened in elections yesterday. So we started off the morning fairly interesting, and we did attempt to pass SB 7 in the morning. We weren't able to get it done in the morning, but we did get it done last night. And so SB 7, which includes language from HB 6, has passed the House Elections Committee, and we'll move on to calendars, and we will get that on the floor as soon as we can. But this is when it comes to election integrity, it's really worth mentioning that, between Chairman Hughes, Chairman Kane, Chairman Burrows at the calendars, Speaker Phelan, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, the governor, they've all been focused and determined on this. And I know sometimes it feels like maybe our eyes get off the ball, but we've been focused on election integrity, and we're not letting up on it. And so thanks for your patience as we've worked through HB 6 and SB 7. These are moving, and we will have something come through the House and get something back to the Senate, and we'll get something on the governor's desk. But things are moving along. In addition to that, it's interesting, as Chairman Hughes was talking about, just the stuff within these two bills. There's a lot of it the other side agrees with as well. I laid out SB 598, which is Senator Colcore's bill in the Elections Committee last night, and it's a bill that has to do with the paper trail and the risk limit auditing. And in the Senate side, NAACP was for it. The Republican groups were all for it. Texas Values. When it came over to this side, we've had the League of Women Voters come and they're excited about the bill. We have when you get to the details of what's in these bills, there's actually some good bipartisan support for it. Unfortunately, the media and certain people have demonized it, but the details of it really do make voting easier and our elections more secure. And I think that if we can keep to that message and keep on pointing out the facts of what's in these bills, we're gonna win the messaging battle. There's more of us, and we just have to keep on spreading the word. What do we have? I saw someone asking about SB 1112 and 1114. Those are going to be on the calendar next week. We still will hear more bills, House bills next week. I think next week, maybe the last week we can do House bills. We're going to have last opportunity in the election committee, and so I'll have House Bill 3200 is one of my bills that deals with setting in place a method for curing ballots and allowing people to still be able to vote if their ballot comes in invalid and is disqualified. There's some confusion around that, and so fortunately that was actually a bill that I was supposed to lay out this week, and we actually pulled it at the last minute because we couldn't get the details, the language just the way we wanted to with Ledge Council. And actually, with the help of some people, some of the grassroots, we were able to nail that down, and we will hear that next week. And I think we're going to get that passed out of committee next week as well. And so, again, y'all have been instrumental in helping to get these bills, make sure that we're getting them right. Your feedback helps a ton. I know many of you have been in election judges or poll watchers, and you understand the process, and so your feedback and testimony in the hearings has been extremely helpful. And let's see, what else do we got going on? The mask rule has been lifted in the House. Senate, you guys need to catch up with us. so you can come to hearings now and not have to wear masks. That's it's a big deal for us. And on the floor, it's been lifted as well. And as Chairman Click mentioned, we're really heating up. Tomorrow is redistricting committee, so I will be. My last weekend back home was last weekend. I'll be here in Austin for the redistricting committee. If you want to register for testimony, there's still time. Redistricting, and really for, this one's supposed to be focused on Central Texas, but we're accepting testimony from anywhere in the state. So if you want to join or watch that, that's you can find that on the redistricting House website. And so I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you, Representative. We appreciate it. Good information. And I think which leads us right into our speaker, who should be very impressed with all that you guys are doing here that we are all doing here in Texas. But our speaker is Josh Findlay, and he is, I've known Josh for a little over a year now, or probably longer than that, maybe 2 years, I guess. And we work together with campaigns, also pretty much also with the convention. But he was very instrumental in the Trump re-election, as he was worked with the Lawyers for Trump Coalition. He helped with the you did the National Legal War Room. He was his senior advisor for the election integrity, dealing with all different states. I think you had 15, 16 states, if I remember, Josh. But he and I worked again on the convention, vetting, making sure that we had people going to the convention that supported President Trump, that had good intentions. And so it was great working with them. I just heard him last week at the RNC and doing a presentation, and we were chatting. I said, oh, how about coming on our call? And so poof, here he is. A week later, we have you on our call, and we're so delighted to have you here. And you give us a perspective as the RNC is working hard on election integrity. So I turn it over to you, Josh. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Tony Ann. It's great to be with you all this morning. Just a wonderful opportunity. I love that you're all on a call this early in the morning talking about election integrity. It really shows what an important issue this is nationwide and that you're engaged in it. So really happy to see this. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, Tony Ann. Just to give you a little bit on my perspective from how I'm coming to this issue. So like Tony Ann said, immediately prior to this, I was the Associate General Counsel for the Trump campaign. And one of my big responsibilities in that role is that I ran the president's national war room out of the White House, running up to election night and then on election night and following that, which means I saw firsthand everything that the Democrats were doing last cycle to try to cause mistakes, confusion, and abuse in the election. After the election, I'm from Georgia originally, so that was one of my states of focus. As we all know, there was a lot of stuff happening there with everything from the election process to what was happening in the counties to the Secretary of State. There was a lot of confusion there. So I come to this with I think a pretty good understanding of what happened in the 2020 election cycle, and hopefully the ability to collaborate with everyone on the ground to put in some solutions to re-inspire confidence in the election process for 2020. Just a little history on the RNC here and their role in election integrity, because you probably haven't heard much from the RNC in this space previously. And there is a reason for that. Way back in the early 1980s, there was a lawsuit that happened. And basically, some people associated with the Republican Party might have been associated with some actual voter suppression. And in that lawsuit, essentially what happened is the RNC entered into a consent order. And as part of that consent order, they were not allowed to participate in voter suppression or election day, what we used to call election day operations activities. And that consent order stayed in place until about 2019. So there was a big gap nationally in what Republicans were doing with election integrity. Now, other organizations were taking up the slack there. The senatorial committee, the congressional committee, they would do operations, but the RNC just wasn't allowed to do much legally. And in fact, you know, being on campaigns and other ends prior to this, other organizations prior to this, whenever we would be on a conference call with the RNC and would start talking about election day operations, the RNC representatives would have to either get off the call or get up and leave the room or something like that. It just wasn't allowed. And as a result, kind of this past election cycle, election day operations or election integrity was kind of left to the campaign. And what we realized this past cycle with COVID and everything that happened was that this is just too big of an operation for any one entity to tackle. You know, what the Democrats did with COVID is, and there's some debate, but they may not have had an organized plan to create nationwide election fraud, but by eliminating as many election rules as they can, they created an environment where anybody that wanted to commit election fraud or mistake or abuse could. And I think above all, they caused a lot of confusion in the electoral process. And that confusion undermined voter confidence in the elections. And, you know, coming from Georgia, I was down there for those the two runoff races following the presidential election. And I think the confusion and doubt caused a lot of people to stay home there. So one thing that we're trying to do this election cycle with the RNC, our overarching goal is to reinstill confidence in the electoral process. The bottom line is votes still win elections. So we have to get out and vote more than the Democrats do. But to do that, we understand that people have to have confidence that their vote will count. I think in the past, you know, election integrity was kind of a gotcha thing for Republicans. It kind of felt like everyone held the operation close to the vest. The way I like to say it is, you know, our election integrity teams, as well-intentioned as they were, they would look at the bright stars in the sky of Democrat fraud, and they would spot the 2 or 3 bright stars of Democrat fraud. They would draw attention to that, which was great and very essential. But they also claimed sometimes that they had mapped the whole night sky. And this time around, we need 1,000 people out there with telescopes looking at the night sky, examining every single thing that the Democrats do, especially if they're going to be trying to change rules at the last minute, if they're going to have election administrators that are going to cause confusion like they did last time. We need to hold people accountable. And so we are going to put together the largest, most well-trained election integrity operation that the Republican Party has ever seen. It's an ambitious goal, but I think that's what we have to do this time around to inspire confidence in the elections. So just to talk a little bit about that process then, and kind of what we're doing here at the RNC. We've got, I would say, maybe 2 main things that we're working on right now, and then a third thing that we're really building toward. The first is we've got an election integrity committee that is working, and they are going in depth, putting together, taking what we learned from 2020 and putting together a list of best practices for 2022. They're divided up into 4 subcommittees. They're bringing in national experts, and I think they're going to put together a good report that we can all use kind of as a roadmap going forward. Now, we all know roadmaps have limited utility if you can't implement them, but I think having a good map in place is the first step in the process. The other thing that we're doing is engaging in litigation and legislation, and we're doing that early. I think one thing that we learned in 2020 is that if we're litigating stuff in the summer before an election, it's probably too late. We've probably lost the issue at that point. So we are engaging in litigation early. I think, to use Georgia as an example, I think the Democrats filed 5 lawsuits once they passed their election integrity bill there by 5 organizations. We've intervened in those lawsuits, and we're going to make sure that we can defend that bill the best we can. Same thing in Iowa. We've intervened in lawsuits there. As far as legislation, just so we're clear, the RNC is not a lobbying shop, so we don't go into state legislatures and try to influence specific legislation. But we do put out guidance for our members, for our staff, for people on the ground about things that we should be talking about as far as principles that we hope legislators and legislatures will adopt. But we don't get involved in specific legislation. Just wanted to be clear about that. And then the last thing that we are really engaged in here, and this is kind of what I see as one of my main responsibilities, is organization building. Putting together those 1,000 people with telescopes, like I said earlier, looking at the night sky. I think there are a couple of guiding principles that this organization has to have that it maybe hasn't in the past that I hope you will find satisfying. Because one of the things that we all know that the RNC sometimes has a problem with is parachuting into a situation, thinking that they know the best, and then kind of overrunning what happens locally, all of the expertise that y'all have gathered on the ground over election cycles. The thing that makes election integrity different than a political operation is that there are 50 different ways to run elections. Every state has a different way to do that. And we know that we are not going to parachute in and be experts in that overnight, because not only do you have, what the law says, but you have the practice of what actually happens on the ground. And on top of that, you have election administrators that can change things kind of overnight in some cases. So I think a couple of changes that we want to see this time around is we want this to be very much a ground up approach. One thing that the RNC, I think, does better than just about any organization in the country is recruit, train, and place volunteers. And we've got the infrastructure to do that, but we need the expertise to make sure that those volunteers know exactly how to best exercise the Republican rights in the election integrity space. And just to give you an idea of what that training will look like, we've already started on this, 18 months, almost 2 years out from the next election. And I was jotting down with our legal team what that training will entail. And just to give you an idea of the scope of what we're going to have to do in every state. If we wanted to put together a poll worker training, for example, we would need to take down all of the legal requirements and responsibilities for that, and then write down a training manual for how to become one in the first place, what the best practices are on the ground, how to report any incidents that you find, and how to resolve any issues that pop up. We need to do the same thing for poll watchers, but would have to do it in the context of early voting, election day voting, watching the chain of custody of the ballots, looking at ballot boxes in states where that's legal. If there's an adjudication process on ballots, the canvassing and the counting period at both county and central counting locations at the precinct level, if they're allowed to do that early in certain states, if they do that only election day or post-election day counting, if there's any challenge process for those ballots, and if it goes into a recount. So just to give you an idea of the training that would go into, that we're planning on putting together for people across the country. We want everyone to know that their vote counts. And for that to happen, people have to be familiar with every step of the election process. And that was just for one small segment of what we're trying to train for. The other thing that we're committed to is to providing better legal representation in the states. One thing that we recognized last time is that the Democrats, and we've known this for a while, actually. In fact, funny story, I am from Georgia originally. When Stacey Abrams ran for governor in Georgia, I was heavily involved as senior advisor for the governor's campaign down there. And as soon as we won that election, Stacey Abrams started filing lawsuits. And the interesting thing was, if the margin, I think, for the governor was about 50,000 votes at that point, and she would file a lawsuit for, let's say 3,000 votes. And the governor would say, I'm not going to fight it. It's not going to affect my election. Let's not worry about it. We'll just let it slide. And then she'd file another lawsuit for, 5,000 votes. And they'd say, it's not going to affect my election. Let's just let it slide. We're not going to worry about it. And I told people even back then, we're laying a foundation for Democrats to start chipping away at votes. And there's going to come an election when it matters. And I don't think anybody thought that it was going to be, just 2 years away, but that's what it ended up being. So we're committed to having better legal resources on the ground as well. Sometimes in the past, we've had staffers that doubled as lawyers and organizers, and we're completely dividing those roles so that everyone has top-notch legal representation and we're not giving away any votes. The last point that I kind of want to make here, I know y'all have heard about what's going on in Texas, and I do want to leave time for questions if there are to answer them, is that we still have to keep an eye on what the Democrats are doing. It was very inspiring to hear what your legislature is doing right now, even though Republicans won Texas. I think we can look at Texas as a pattern from Georgia and say that we can't ever rest on this stuff. But even though Republicans won in Texas, we still have to keep an eye on what the Democrats are doing. Just yesterday, we got word that in Vermont, the state legislature is going to vote to allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. And it's probably going to pass. And the governor there is not going to try to veto that bill. And just take a minute and think about that, right? There's, non-citizens are not allowed to vote in federal elections right now. That's governed by federal law. The Vermont Constitution prohibits non-citizens from voting in state elections, but there's nothing in that Constitution that prohibits non-citizens from voting in municipal elections. We all know how the Democrats work, right? They get one thing passed in some place that people aren't paying attention to, that is not going to have much opposition. And all of a sudden, they move it from one jurisdiction to the next, from one state to the next. And the next thing you know, you can't even say anything about non-citizens not voting in elections because they've made it seem normal. We have to protect our election integrity in this country. We have to protect our rights, and we have to make sure that that every legal vote counts and it counts once. So thank you for staying vigilant on all of this stuff. I know that there are a lot of questions out there. My guess is there's going to be some questions about HR 1 that Congress is doing as well. There's probably some state questions. But I'm happy to talk mostly about what you can expect from the RNC this time around, and hopefully we can inspire confidence in everyone. But thank you for having me on, and I guess we'll go to questions if that works.
Yeah, Josh, now you get to go on the hot seat. Karen Marshall is our question lady, and it opens up to actually all 4 speakers that were on, but we're going to go focus on you first right now. So Karen, do you want to take it over, please?
All right, Josh, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you.
We're going to start with a question from Bisa. She said, Josh, what can you tell us about the movement of HR 1 in the Senate and the top 3 worst parts of that bill?
So Republicans are fighting hard against this bill. That's what I will say. We know that it depends pretty much on 2 Democrats in the Senate. And I think this bill is even too liberal for some of them. The worst part of this bill, hands down, is that it fundamentally takes the power of administering elections from the states to the federal government. And we just can't let that happen. I mean, it opens the door for all kinds of terrible things, like we talked about earlier, non-citizens being allowed to vote, taking away ID requirements. I mean, think about all the things that you have to have an ID to do in this country. But to not have one to exercise your fundamental right as a citizen of this country seems kind of crazy. There are lots of bad parts of the bill, but the overarching thing is that, Congress, whoever controls it, we know what the Democrats are doing to try to hang on to control of that, will be able to take the power from the states. And we just can't let that happen.
You're muted, Karen. Oh, there you go.
Okay, just reversed it. Sorry about that.
No
Second question is from Virginia Webb, asks, Josh, do you do speaking engagements? And she's asking for her club.
I do. I am very passionate about this subject. I think we all need to be better engaged on it. And I would love to talk to any group that has time. I'd love that.
So let me interject there is what I would like to see. If you do one, say yes to one, maybe we can coordinate a couple different clubs in the area and or organizations so that you can be heard by many. Just so that, and we'll help coordinate that for you, Josh. Go ahead, Karen.
All right. Julie Wilson says, I've heard that the RNC is not helping with the Arizona audit. It's reported that they're staying silent while the Republican state senators and Republican grassroots are working hard. Do you know what is happening?
I do know what is happening, yes. And, that is a legislative process. The Senate is kind of running that. So it's not always appropriate for a party to be super involved out front with that. However, we do have somebody on the ground who I speak with daily who is monitoring that process. He's in touch with the legislators, with the governor's office constantly, getting updates on what's going on. And they know that we're a resource there if they need it, but the Senate is primarily driving this. And because it's kind of a legislative process, that's the most appropriate way to handle it, I think. But we are fully engaged in that as far as they've asked us to be.
All right. And one of the questions we didn't get to before, Tom Boone asks, can we get a law passed to require a U.S. House rep to actually live in the district they are representing?
Yeah, right.
And that is up to the states. We have, I say that. Let me back up. This is Brian Hughes. So the Constitution sets the qualifications for those federal offices. Now the states can set requirements for, you have Texas House, Texas Senate, and for the Texas House, Texas Senate, you are required to be a resident of the district. The Constitution requires that members of the U.S. House be residents of the state. And so I know there's other lawyers on the call. I don't think we're allowed to add to those requirements. I'll defer to anybody else. But I think when this has come up before, that's, of course, there's a political answer for that. If you would think the voters would not, you think there'd be an issue in your campaign if you didn't live in the district, but sometimes it's not. But that's my understanding of the law on that. The U.S. Constitution, federal law sets those qualifications for the U.S. Congress. We set the qualifications for state offices.
I would agree. Josh, you would probably agree with that, right?
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Good answer, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not that we liked it actually, but yes. And you're right, Connie, that it is a constitutional amendment. Go ahead.
All right. Mike McCloskey asks, what is the RNC doing to make sure that there are 50 well-functioning state parties?
Yeah, so this is something that the RNC is very passionate about. For battleground states that typically get the attention, this isn't an issue. Battleground states sometimes think they have too much RNC presence, although, with the way the Democrats are fighting, it just seems like we need to escalate more and more every year. But what the RNC has done for non-battleground states is last election cycle, they implemented what's called the GROW program. And it's an infrastructure building program for non-battleground states. Helps them with things like fundraising, communications, all of those things that sometimes a state party that doesn't have to fight hard every 2 years for kind of takes for granted, or maybe doesn't have the resources to provide. And it worked last time as a kind of a pilot program. It worked extremely well. And so we've greatly expanded that this time around. Last time it was kind of a small department that would have calls with parties and check in. This time, I think they're hiring 5 deputies in 5 different categories to help people build politically, finance, communications, digital, and one other category that I'm forgetting right now. But, every state party is going to have the opportunity to grow and become more institutionalized kind of through this program. I think it's really exciting. So for anybody that has people in kind of non-battleground states, make sure that you're talking about this with them and making sure they're fully engaged, because I think it's a great opportunity for parties.
And Josh, am I correct in that Rick Gorka is the one that's leading the charge on that?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
He's been kind of a national political figure for years. I think he brings a wealth of experience to it. You're exactly right, Tony.
So to let you all know is that he has agreed to be interviewed by me, talking with Tad, And so he'll be on one of our, you'll see him in TAD Talks in one of the upcoming issues. So that was a good question. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Go ahead.
All right, that may be all the ones specifically targeted, aimed at you, Josh, but feel free to jump in on any of the others if you know the answer. Let's see here. The next question that's been asked is, let's see here. If bills don't get put on the state calendar today, they can be allowed to expire without a vote since 30 days will pass. What is being done to make sure the election integrity bills being discussed here that aren't that far in the process get a vote?
So over in the Texas Senate, we have a little bit different system. We have what's called the intent calendar. And once a bill has made it through the committee process, any senator can place a bill on the intent calendar. Then if we get our votes to suspend the rules, the lieutenant governor will recognize this for the bill. So over in the Senate, we're fairly confident. We're very confident that the bills that make it to the floor are going to be heard. We still have plenty of time over in the Senate. I know the House rules are more complicated. I'll defer to my friends over there. They know what they're doing. But over in the Senate, we're in good shape on getting bills to the floor.
All right. And then
Why don't does Stephanie or JC want to chime in on that?
You know, we have this next week bills that are in committee that are House bills. We have a deadline of passing House bills out of committee, and from there they go to the calendar. So we still have time for stuff to potentially pass.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is that there is still time and there is still focus on getting this through. So don't lose hope in us.
all right. Ann Grinnells asks, in the last session, election integrity bills were weakened and then allowed to die. How will you prevent that this time? Kind of follows up with that previous one.
Well, I can speak of Brian Hughes here. Senate Bill 9 was the omnibus election integrity bill from last session, 2019. You know, as you guys know, when we go on CNN and the New York Times and Washington Post, they all have this same narrative that we are doing something reacting to the last election. And of course, that's important. But as folks on this call know, Texas has been working on cleaning up the election process for a long time. In 2017, the legislature passed Senate Bill 5, which was a mail ballot cleanup bill. It increased the penalty for lying on your mail ballot application. It gave the AG more power. And it's really because of that bill from 2017 that the House and the Senate passed, the governor signed. It's largely because of that bill that we now have more evidence of the scope of election fraud in Texas. And so now the left has gone from saying there's no election fraud to there's no widespread election fraud. I don't know what their next position will be. But anyway, last session, Senate Bill 9 was a broad, comprehensive election integrity bill made through the Senate. But you know, this is a process, and Democrats have a say too. They can throw up traps. They can slow things down. We were all frustrated. Everybody on this call, everybody in the grassroots, frustrated that Senate Bill 9 didn't make it last time. So more folks are involved. There's more grassroots push this time. The governor's more involved, Lieutenant Governor, Speaker. So we're ahead of the game. If you look at the big bills that are passing the House and the Senate, the ones first in line are election integrity bills. So we're in good shape. We're not done, but we're in good shape.
All right. And then Virginia Webb asks, Representative Chaton, what is the status of SB 2232?
Let me look.
And there goes his computer.
You said SB 2320 or 2232?
Yes.
That looks like it is still in, actually it's on the Senate side, still in state affairs. So that'd be a Senator Hughes question.
SB 2232, I'm grabbing it right now. Y'all go ahead, sorry.
All right. Not to use this term, but I'll circle back to you when, okay.
I got it, I'm sorry. That's the bill that I mentioned earlier, and that's the bill that has to do with closing the gap between early voting and election day. Now, Senator Hall and I've worked on that for a while. Just so you'll know, the Senate rules are a little different. That bill was just filed. It was filed a couple of days ago. In the Senate, we can sometimes suspend the rules. So that bill was filed a couple of days ago. Immediately had a hearing. We had the hearing at the same time as the hearing on constitutional carry was going on. We anticipate voting that bill on Monday if we can get the votes. That's the bill I mentioned before that changes our system from having an early voting period with a gap in election day and changes us to having one continuous voting period. I like it. I'm for the bill. That's a big change, but Republicans are not sure about that. So I think it's going to get done, but we're late in the process on that bill.
So, Senator, can we get some talking points, or who would we want to talk to that if that bill, if we need to activate the group here to make some calls to their senators?
Definitely. I can send you the one pager on it. I'll get you the details. It's Senator Hall's bill, but we've worked pretty closely on it. Of course, we worked on the hearing, worked with the Secretary of State's office. We had a hearing on another bill that wasn't on this topic, but we amended the bill in committee just so Senator Hall would have a chance to discuss it and kind of get the issue out there. And so far, it's going well. And I'll send you the talking points and the one pager on the bill. I've got it.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll share that information.
All right. Howard Power says in Collin County, the ballot board counts early votes and county staff counts election day votes. This process gives the county party audit capabilities over early voting. Does Senator Hall's bill retain a role for the ballot board and by extension, the county party in the election process?
So if we're talking about Senator Hall's bill that combines early voting and election day, the bill just says that by the 2024 election, we will have this combined process. But it directs the Secretary of State to work with the counties and the parties to work out the details. So if the bill passes, it will say come 2024, we'll have this one election period, but we'll be back next legislative session to fill in all the details. So we're not making this change for 2022. It wouldn't take effect until 2024 and only when details like that are worked out. So as this bill passes, I know you will stay involved. Let us hear from you so we get those details right. Again, this is a big change, and I like it, but folks have to get comfortable with it because this is a big change. Ever since the 1980s, when they added early voting, it's been a separate period from Election Day. So details like that will be worked out between now and the next legislative session if the bill passes.
Okay, so we have time for one more question, Karen.
All right. Ann Grinnells asks, what is being done to prevent bad machines or bad software from being used, the kind that allow an internet connection that don't have an auditable paper trail? What's being done about that?
Mm-hmm. So Representative Jatan mentioned that auditable paper trail bill that he's got. Representative Senator Cole, of course, that the Senate's passed, the House is about to pass from committee. Senate Bill 7, just like Senate Bill 9 2 years ago, requires an auditable paper trail. And there was Republican opposition to that, believe it or not, but finally all the Republicans are pretty much on board with an auditable paper trail. That's in Senate Bill 7. It's in 2 or 3 standalone bills that I filed, Senator Colcourt filed. I know our friends in the House have filed those bills as well. We expect that to become law. Senate Bill 7 also puts stricter requirements on voting machines, on the technology, on the little memory card device that they use to take the votes from the polling place to central counting. Senate Bill 7 requires that be a piece of equipment that can only be used once. It is impossible to overwrite, to edit that. It can be used only one time. We also require keystroke audits of the machines, and we require everything in central county to be video streamed, 100% live stream from beginning to end. So yes, there's strong measures in Senate Bill 7 to make sure those machines are only the securest machines and to make sure they're working right.
That's great.
All right, and the last question you can deal with.
Wait. Representative Jatone, did you want to address that? I think the senator covered it pretty well, but did you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, no, he did a great job on that. That's right. There are several bills on that. It is in Senator Colcourt's bill and SB 7, and it is important to make sure that that paper trail is there and it's audible. And someone had asked about the fact that it doesn't start till 2026, and that's a big part of that pilot program to make sure that we get the audit process just right to make sure that we're able to crack down on anything that pops up. And so it is going to take some time. It is a big system to work out when it comes to the audit part. But that paper backup is voter verifiable paper ballot backup is an important component that will start sooner. And then also the internet, being able to connect the machines to the internet, that absolutely has to stop. And
Great. Okay, that's awesome. I think that's really important. You know, across the nation, I hear this all over, and I know that many of the people, the committee, the Election Integrity Committee members are following that and asking people from Texas, what are we doing? So I've been connecting them, like with Steve Ministeri and a couple others, so that they know what we're doing and how far we're taking it. So these will be also very important for them to know. Okay, so I think, Karen, I think there were a number of others questions that were there. And I know there were other questions that pertain to other issues. And I wish we had time to cover all of them. We're already past 8 o'clock. And I know we started a little bit late, but it's so important that we have this dialogue and you have the opportunity to ask questions and our representatives have the opportunity to answer them. We have a couple challenges for you. Bisa, did you want to do, I know Representative Jatan had mentioned redistricting about tomorrow. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that before we go to my challenge?
Yeah, calling all the grassroots. So they are having the redistricting House Committee tomorrow, Saturday, May 1st at 10:30 at the Texas Capitol. The state demographer is going to do population projections. Central Texas is the topic. However, they are taking public testimony. If you want to testify virtually, you need to register today by 10:30 a.m. And so Central Texas has grown a whole lot. And as we all know, it's going to grow continually. We need to make sure that we get good representation in those districts. So I'm hoping everybody will get on and testify and speak to specific points on the redistricting. So if you want to testify virtually, 10:30 this morning is the deadline to register. Otherwise, be in Austin tomorrow by 10:30.
So they can go to the TLO website, and in the middle there's a redistricting link, and you can go there and click on to be able to follow the trail to how to sign up on the Zoom. Is that correct, Bisa?
Right. You can go to House committees, go to redistricting, go to committee meeting hearings, click on that, go to that May 1st announcement, and it's got a link on there.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So your action items for this week, and most of it's going to be
Whoops. You're frozen, Tony Ann.
I'm sorry.
You're back now.
Oh, my back. Okay. So I'll call to action items. Did I lose it again?
No, you're good.
Okay, is May 1st to vote tomorrow. I know we have redistricting. Watch it. If you're not even going to testify, just watch so you get to know how it works. But get 5 people. I saw that Tom Boone put a comment. He won by 1 vote. I talked to my mother yesterday. I said, Mom, we got to get you to the polls. Oh, Tony Ann, I don't have to vote. Oh, yes, you do. You could be, that vote could make the difference. So I tell you, you get those 5 people to the polls for tomorrow and vote in the election. Also, keep an eye out for all these different bills that were brought up today, particularly HB 6. We've got a number of the Senate ones that are going to be, they're in calendars, might be going to the floor next week. We need to stay on top of that, ladies and gentlemen. We need to contact our senators, our state reps, and let them know what we support, because it has made a difference. You have definitely made a difference. I'm confirming our speakers, so I'm not going to announce it right now, but I believe we're going to go into more details about a couple bills that are coming out of the Senate. So Anyway, I appreciate all of you being on the call today. It's so important. Thank you for your involvement. Thank you for your willingness to participate. Let's get more people to the polls tomorrow, and let's stay on top of all of these bills that are going and getting that election integrity as our #1 priority. And also a special thank you to our guest speaker, Josh Findlay, today. We appreciate you being on. I know that people are glad to hear the RNC is more engaged than they've ever been. They've always been engaged, but even taking it to the next level. So thank you for that, and all of our elected officials. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you.